Hello from Boulder, Colorado. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us here on day 5 of Awaken the World. Today we're exploring ways that we can wake up through service, and our host is Acharya Fleet Maull. I'm very sorry to announce that we're not able to broadcast Fleet's Talk live tonight due to some technical difficulties, but we are able to share with you a talk that Fleet recorded just a couple of hours ago and sent to us. So that's what's going to play as soon as I finish this introduction. Since the talk is not live, there'll be no Q&A with the audience tonight. But we do encourage you to engage in the comments section anyways, so that this can be a conversational event for everyone involved. Also, we're going to be giving away a retreat tonight to somebody who is commenting, so some additional motivation there. The retreat we're giving away tonight is an emotional enlightenment retreat that's led by Paul Shippey, and that's going to be happening at Maull Mountain Center the first week in December. And a reminder that everyone who's participating in the Awaken the World gets a 10% discount on meals and lodging to the retreat of your choice at Maull Mountain Center using the discount code. So the one other thing that I'd like to tell you about before we get to Acharya Maull's talk tonight is that Acharya Maull is going to be leading a live, we promise, event on October 29th, in which he'll be talking about emotional intelligence, mindfulness, and how to shift relationships in the workplace and all throughout your life. And he's going to be offering some real practical advice as well as practices that you can do to really apply these teachings. So you can check that out by following the link that's on this webpage. So it's now my delight to introduce Acharya Fleet Maull. Fleet Maull is an intrepid social activist, peacemaker, and itinerant meditation teacher who travels the world leading retreats, peacemaker trainings, prison programs, and transformational seminars. He's an empowered senior teacher in 2 Buddhist lineages, as an Acharya in the International Shambhala Buddhist Community, and a sensei in the Zen Peacemaker Order. Fleet is well known as a prison reform activist and the founder of Prison Mindfulness Institute and the National Prison Hospice Association. He's also a sought-after business consultant, trainer, executive coach, working with business leaders in diverse industries to build healthy and sustainable enterprises with cultures grounded in mindfulness, emotional intelligence, transparency, accountability, and integrity. Fleet offers similar training to the general public through Radical Responsibility and Radical Possibility seminars in cities all across the United States. Fleet is the author of Dharma in Hell, The Prison Writings of Fleet Maull, and numerous articles and book chapters. He is currently completing his latest book called Radical Responsibility. So we're so appreciative that Fleet has been able to join this event and offer teachings, and we hope that you all benefit greatly from this. Thank you.
Welcome to our Maull Mountain Center Awaken the World Conference. This is day 5, Waking Up Through Service. My name is Acharya Fleet Maull, and I'm your host for today's segment. You know, it's been so exciting so far to watch all the presentations, beginning with the keynote on day 1 last Sunday evening with Sakyam Mipam Rinpoche. Really set the tone for this whole conference. Then we had the day on health and well-being, hosted by Holly Gailey, and incredible presentation with Punlap Rinpoche was particularly one that I really loved, as well as Sean Korn was really great. And they're all really good. Susan Piver on relationship the following day with Tara Brock and others. And then yesterday, Lodro Rinsler, Waking Up Through Work. And Michael Carroll's presentation and others, Susan Shea and myself. So it's been a really exciting conference so far, and I hope you've really enjoyed it. And as you know by now, all these presentations and the videos are available for 48 hours after they originally ran live. And then, of course, you'll be able to purchase the whole archive to watch it forever if you like, or at least at your leisure when you would like. So today, Waking Up Through Service. So I'm really excited to be able to host this, and especially with the presenters that we have. I had a lot of fun doing the interviews with Roshi Bernie Glassman, who's been a teacher and a mentor to me in my Zen training and Zen Peacemaker training. Also Roshi Joan Halifax, who has also been another teacher and mentor with me, who I've worked with quite closely in the end-of-life care field. And I'll say a little bit more about each of them. Angel Kyoto Williams, an amazing African-American engaged Buddhist leader who's been really leading the way in so many different areas of bringing engaged Buddhism to a larger sphere and to a more diverse audience and engagement, especially where she is on the West Coast in the Bay Area, based in Berkeley, but really nationally has quite a voice that's gotten out there. So I think you'll really enjoy Angel Kyoto Williams. And then finally Shiva Ray, who's a very well-known international yoga teacher, but also is especially well-known for her yoga activism. And so that's really our today's subject. Waking Up Through Service is obviously the integration of spiritual evolution, spiritual awakening, spiritual practice with serving others, with social change work, with social action work. And you know, we have two real pioneers of what's sometimes called engaged spirituality or contemplative social action or engaged Buddhism, if you will, with Roshi Bernie Glassman and Roshi Joan Halifax. They have really paved the way here in the United States, certainly, and in the West altogether, for this integration of spirituality and social action, social change, and in particular, in Bernie Glassman's case, the integration of Zen and social action. He's very well known for starting the street retreats, the Zen Peacemaker street retreats, the Auschwitz retreat that happens every year, the Bearing Witness retreat at Auschwitz-Birkenau, the former Nazi concentration camp in Poland. Actually, I'll be headed there in just a couple of weeks. It's running again, I think, for the 16th or 17th time, the second week of November this year. And also, we've started another Bearing Witness retreat in Rwanda that's run for several years now. And there have been some other Bearing Witness retreats around the world that have been founded by people in Bernie Glassman's and Peacemaker lineage. Bernie's also really well known for having established the Grayston Foundation, an amazing model for urban renewal in Yonkers, New York. So, and then Roshi Joan Halifax, really one of the pioneers of the conscious living and dying movement in this country, and been doing amazing work all the way back from the 60s forward in the end-of-life care fields, in deep ecology, studying and working with shamans around the world. She's studied with many, many different Buddhist teachers and founded the Ojai Foundation in California, and then went on to found the Upaya Zen Center and the Upaya Institute, and particularly well known for her Being with Dying program and the Buddhist chaplaincy training that she has there, which I've been privileged to be part of both of those. So I think you'll really enjoy their presentations. Again, I spoke about Angel Kyoto Williams before, and Shiva Ray, you know, has been a voice for activating this worldwide yoga movement, which has been incredibly successful in entering the mainstream of American society and Western society, to ask people to embrace a larger consciousness with their practice, to really reconnect yoga to its spiritual roots, and not only in terms of one's own spiritual evolution, but in terms of really aspiring for the benefit of all beings and really trying to create positive shifts in our world through practice, through prayer, through aspiration, through intention, as well as direct engagement in the community. So I think you're really going to enjoy those presentations. So this whole idea of integrating spirituality with social action, social change work, peacemaking, this idea of waking up through service is quite an interesting one and presents some conundrums, if you will. Many great spiritual figures over time, including St. Paul, including Gandhi, including the Dalai Lama in certain ways. I'm going to be paraphrasing here. So have basically given this message that if you really want to be happy, forget about yourself and focus on others. Now, that seems a little bit counterintuitive, right? I mean, we've heard such things before, but you know, kind of instinctually, a lot of us, you know, are challenged with our lives, and a lot of us are drawn into very spiritual paths out of some kind of suffering or at least some kind of dissatisfaction with life as it is. And so we instinctually think, well, if it seems like this, like I'm unhappy, or this is unhappy, or there's some kind of internal dissatisfaction I have. So if I focus more on this, right, if I focus on making myself happy, if I focus on meeting my own needs, then probably I'll be happier. And but what human beings have discovered across the globe through many different cultures and spiritual traditions for several thousand years is actually it doesn't work that way. The more we focus on ourselves, in a sense, the unhappier we become, and often the more unhappiness we spread around for others as well. And that actually by shifting our focus to others and to service, we find the greatest joy and the greatest happiness. Now, there are some difficulties with that and some challenges with that. I think, those of us who've grown up in the West, we've grown up with a lot of cultural conditioning, um, with a lot of what I would say is kind of a shame-based conditioning, and that we've internalized a lot of that. And we have often have internalized a strong sense of unworthiness, or just not feeling that great about ourselves, or a sense of insecurity and fear about ourselves, or even the extreme of kind of a self-loathing. Many of us are actually very wounded by our upbringing, by the conditions that we were raised in. Most of us had a mixed bag. Hardly anybody had the ideal childhood growing up, but some of us obviously had a much more stable, loving environment, and some of us had a much more challenging environment. But nonetheless, we all have experienced some kind of wounding in one form or another, and I think it's exacerbated culturally because there's a real push for young children to conform. And really the message is, conform to some kind of mainstream cultural values, or you're not going to be accepted, or love will be withdrawn, which is really the threat of shaming, the threat of sort of being excluded, and having love withdrawn. So, we all have some of that in us. And so the idea of focusing on others could, for some of us, seem like that's giving away myself, or that's uh, just more sort of disempowering myself, or that my wanting to serve others can be somewhat be fueled by my lack of positive regard for myself, or that maybe we get into kind of a rescuer mode, or a kind of martyr complex. I'm going to save the world, and but it's really being driven by some kind of internal insecurity. And so in psychology over the last 20, 30 years, we've had all these ideas about codependency and these kind of things, and enabling, and the issue of navigating, having good boundaries. So I think this idea of forgetting ourselves, and focusing on others, even though it's a spiritual idea that's been around for thousands of years, it's a tried and true idea. Nonetheless, it can be challenging, or it could seem threatening in a certain way, or it could possibly be misapplied. So I just kind of wanted to sort of get all that out there. But then I'd really like to share from my own personal experience, if you will. I was certainly a person growing up that ended up with kind of a hole in my gut for whatever reason. Just various, I had a relatively good family. I mean, I had a wonderful family, but I mean, relatively, stable and loving. But we had our issues, and for whatever reason, I found myself coming through adolescence and into early adulthood with kind of a hole in my gut that I was trying to fill up with anything I could. And so I was definitely in that pattern of I'm not happy, and the way I'm going to get happy is to focus more on myself, the meeting my own needs. And I tried every strategy you can imagine to meet my own needs, and I just made myself more miserable. Got myself caught up in various kinds of addictive behaviors and so forth. And it was really in my um, path of recovery from some of those addictive behaviors that I began to discover that self-focus was actually not making me happy. That in fact it was just creating more and more problems, and it was actually making me quite unhappy. And at the same time, I was involved in a spiritual path where I was developing greater capacity for awareness through meditation practices of various kinds, deeply involved in the Shambhala Buddhist path as well as the Zen Peacemaker path. And I was in a situation where I found myself called to service. I was serving time in a federal prison. Uh, I arrived there just at the beginning of the AIDS epidemic in the mid 80s, and I was at a federal prison where they were bringing all the AIDS patients from the whole federal system there, a federal prison hospital. And it was a place of tremendous suffering. Not only the AIDS patients, but people suffering and dying with many other illnesses. It was also a psychiatric facility. I was there as part of the general population. It was there to help run the place. Um, but a place of tremendous suffering. And it was actually, almost in selfish terms, it was a benefit for me because it shocked me out of the drama I was caught up in about my own situation at that time. I'd been sentenced on drug charges with a mandatory minimum charge, and initially was looking at 30 years without parole. On my appeal and other things, it changed to 25 years without parole. And then once I figured out how the good time worked, it meant that I would serve 14 years if I managed to stay out of trouble. That still seemed like forever. Obviously, it's a long time. And I did serve 14 years. And but initially there, of course, I was caught up in that drama. And when I came into contact with this world of profound suffering at that federal prison, it just shook me out of my own drama and got me focused on the suffering of others. And I had the wonderful example, the incredible example of my original and my first root spiritual teacher, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who was a person, at least in my experience, who just focused on others and awakening others and benefiting others 24/7 his whole life. And so I had that example of someone who was just continually in that mode of service. And so the circumstances created a situation where it seemed rather choiceless to me to try to show up and serve in some way. So I had a day job there helping people learn to read and helping them get their GEDs, working as a school teacher. I helped start the first hospice program inside a prison with another prisoner there. And I was teaching meditation classes and sourcing 12-step work and so forth. And my life really was in there was a life of service. That became my community, and I was trying to show up and serve in any way I can. And this is what really began to transform my life, and especially the hospice work. We became surrogate family members for our hospice patients who were prisoners dying in prison, separated from their loved ones, often isolated in locked wards without even access to their friends. And many of their longtime prisoner friends were at other penitentiaries where they'd been sent from to this federal prison. So very isolated, really suffering, often in a lot of pain. In the early days of the AIDS epidemic, before the protease inhibitors, I mean, just terrible, terrible suffering. And it was in focusing on their needs that I found the greatest release and freedom and happiness I had yet experienced in my life. So what I directly experienced and what I know countless other human beings have experienced for thousands of years, that when we actually get the focus off ourselves for a moment and onto someone else, it really changes our experience. Now, of course, this could be done in a kind of self-negating way or a martyr-like way, and that's not what we're talking about here. Obviously, that wouldn't be helpful. But I think if we have an awareness practice, and if we're engaging in spiritual practices that help us recognize our own basic goodness, our own innate Buddha nature or Christ nature, our own innate divinity, our own innate basic goodness, and cultivating greater confidence in that. If we're engaged in practices like the metta or loving kindness or Maitri meditations. So we're doing the work to really shift that relationship to ourselves to where our basic relationship to ourselves is one of unconditional friendliness or loving kindness for our own being. And we're increasing our confidence in our own basic goodness. Then when we shift out to focusing on others who are suffering, whose needs at that moment are greater than our own perhaps, or even that we can just consciously set our own needs aside for a moment to focus on the needs of another, but not in a self-negating way, not in any kind of aggression towards ourselves, but rather just a natural shift, a natural response. I've actually found that through, and I know countless meditation practitioners have found this, that through our practice, the more we clarify the internal sort of drama of me, that tends to preoccupy us, through our practices, through cultivating this relationship of loving kindness with ourselves, through the clarity that meditation and mindfulness awareness practices bring to us, through gradually kind of untangling some of the web of, uh, of habitual patterns and fear and self-loathing and stuff. As our own internal situation clarifies more and more, we just become less preoccupied with it. It's just not, drawing our attention so much, and we're kind of our focus shifts naturally outward, right? And if we have a relationship of basic friendliness with ourselves, basic warmth, what in the Buddhist tradition is referenced as maitri or metta, then as we shift our attention outwards to others, what naturally shifts is that quality of loving kindness and compassion, and the willingness to be with others and be with others suffering and hold space for that. So that's this distinction I think I want to make here, is that this age-old idea of, if you really want to be happy, forget about yourself and focus on others, or focus on service, I think is a deep spiritual truth. And we need to be careful to make sure that's not clouded or influenced by some kind of self-negation or self-loathing. It's really grounded in a relationship of loving kindness, basic friendliness, self-acceptance with ourselves, right? So talking a little bit further about this integration of uh, spirituality and service, through waking up through service, I'd like to talk about a kind of threefold logic. This is very commonly used in the Buddhist tradition to help kind of understand the way things work. And it's a simple like beginning, middle, and end. Or sometimes we call it ground, like what's the ground of something, and then what's the path to get there, and then what's the fruition, what's the result. Or sometimes it's called view, or what's our understanding of things as they are. And then what's the method? What's the practice, the method, the practice, the path? And then again, what's the action, or what's the result? What comes out of that? So in my Zen Peacemaker training, we work with something called the three tenets, which is one of these threefold logics. And the first tenet is not knowing. And that means that we're letting go of all of our preconceived notions, our cherished opinions about ourselves, about the world, about how things work, about others, which is obviously easier said than done, right? It's very hard to just get into that direct experience of things as they are without it being filtered through all of our internal biases and preconceptions and opinions and so forth, and beliefs about how things are. We're meaning-making machines. We're all quite conditioned, and our conditioning is constantly adding meaning, interpreting the events around us all the time. So to suspend that takes practice. And I think really one of the goals of the deep contemplative practices, the inner practices, even the mystical practices, if you will, of all the great world religious traditions and philosophical traditions, shamanic traditions, one of the goals of that has been, how do you get out of conditioned mind into just direct experience of things as they are, right? And so that's this quality of not knowing. And of course, it's a matter of degree. It's not all or nothing, So we can become less caught in our knowing and more into not knowing by degree. And that's a practice, something we work with. My teacher Trungpa Rinpoche would have referred to this perhaps as non-conceptual mind. And the way that we access that is by taking our seat properly, whether we're in any situation that we might be standing, sitting, or lying down. But the sense of taking our seat properly just means being fully present, and then softening and relaxing, right? So we're fully present with a strong back, and literally or metaphorically, and then we have this soft front, and there's a relaxation into nowness, a relaxation into nowness, and that allows us to accept a quality of awareness that one might refer to as non-conceptual mind, or what in the Zen Peacemakers is called not knowing. Then the second step in the Zen Peacemaker model, the three tenets, is called bearing witness to the joy and suffering of life. And so in this case, we're actually, without the protection of our knowing, all of our opinions, our conditioning, our biases, our filters, we're exposing our mind, our heart, to things as they are. And we're experiencing the joy and suffering of life and of others directly, without anything mediating that experience. And then the idea is that we're willing to stay with that. We don't run away. So that's bearing witness. And in the way Trungpa Rinpoche talked about this, he talked about we hold our seat, right? You literally, when you're on the meditation cushion, right, you take your seat and then you hold your seat. Actually, it's an expression that comes from the dressage tradition, an equestrian discipline called dressage. where the way that you stay in the saddle, you very much hold your seat in the saddle in unison with the horse. So that expression, hold your seat. And that's this idea of not running away, staying present, staying open, staying in not knowing, staying in non-conceptual mind, and really allowing ourselves to be touched deeply by things as they are. When we really hold our seat in the midst of our experience, and this can include all of our internal experience, all kinds of, whether it's joy and beauty or it's pain and suffering, whether it's pain and suffering in the world around us or inside us or just, kind of craziness and upheaval, but it's the kind of fire, like it's being willing to sit in the fire of our own experience and being alive in the world with an open heart, which can be a very hot fire, as we all know. And to the extent that we hold our seat in that fire, like a lot of stuff gets burned up. And, uh, and then there's a kind of radiation, a natural radiation that occurs. So the third step in the peacemaker model is often called loving action or compassionate action, or sometimes when I'm doing this, using this model in the world of work, I just call it effective action, right? But it's an action that isn't premeditated, doesn't come out of our opinions or our conditioning, but it's a natural response of our innate wisdom to things as they are, right? So my theory about how this works is that because we have innate basic goodness and innate wisdom, when you get the filters out of the way and you allow your heart and mind to contact just things as they are, what we naturally get is a naturally wise response, an innately wise and true response that's in relationship to what is. And of course, that's continually changing. So we're always coming back to not knowing, right? Because we may have a very wisdom-based action and it works beautifully, but if we get stuck on that 5 minutes from now, it may not be the right action, right? So we're always coming back to not knowing, right? And then in Trungpa Rinpoche's model, you might say this is radiating out and then holding space for others, holding space for others. So again, the threefold logic is the ground is in the Zen Peacemaker model, it's called not knowing, or in Trungpa Rinpoche's way of talking, non-conceptual mind and taking your seat. Then the path, if you will, in the Zen Peacemaker tradition is called bearing witness, or you could say holding your seat. And then the result or the fruition is compassionate action, effective action, which in the simplest form is simply this quality of radiating out and holding space. So what's radiating out? Confidence in our own basic goodness. That natural loving kindness relationship we have with ourselves is now radiating out to others. So it's basic goodness, it's compassion, it's loving kindness, or in a sense, it's just a spaciousness. And this brings me to kind of the last point I really want to make here is that I think one of the things that we most have to offer in service to others, because, we can't fix other people. If we're caught up in the idea we're going to fix somebody, then we're working from up here. We're in that rescuer mode. I need to be up here, the expert, and I need somebody else to be down here, right? And it's very disempowering to the other person. I'm going to fix them. No, we want to work in this way, right from here, in a peer way. Now, someone may be in trouble, and they may be falling apart in some way. In a sense, they may be very dysfunctional, but we can still see them here, right? We can work from here, right? And so there's no sense of fixing, because people ultimately have to do their own work. We all have to do our own work. Nobody can really do our work for us. But what we can do is hold a space in which it's easier for others to find their own seat, right? To find their own feet, and then do their own work. This really comes to play, for example, in end-of-life care, where when someone's near dying often, and maybe semi-conscious or not conscious at all, one of the most powerful things we can do for them, even when they may be suffering a lot of physical and seemingly sort of emotional or mental suffering, a lot very destabilizing kind of physical things going on and breathing and so forth. One of the or they may be vocalizing fear or things like that. One of the most powerful things we can do is just to provide a very calm space. Like, we're not bringing fear to the bedside, and we've practiced our meditation, our shamatha vipassana meditation. So we have access to that very stable, peaceful, calm, abiding kind of mind. And if we can bring that space to the bedside for a person who's struggling, that's very powerful. And I've been in that situation countless times, countless times. and seen the very direct impact of that in helping someone else relax and better work with their situation, right? So waking up through service. So obviously it has to do with doing our own work, right? But simultaneously focusing on others. In the great Mahayana tradition of Buddhism, it said that any notion of personal enlightenment is still kind of limited. If we have a notion of individual enlightenment, it's still kind of, there's a certain delusion involved in that. It's limited. And that in order to go beyond that, we focus on dedicating our practice and our life for the awakening of all beings, right? That becomes our motivation to practice. Roshi Bernie Glassman, who you're going to hear from in the interview I did with him, who tends to just go by Bernie, he has, a lot, well, some of us think, what's contemplative social action or contemplative peacemaking or engaged spirituality? Well, it's kind of, you take social action of some kind, you take service of some kind, and you take meditation or spiritual practice of some kind, and you make a sandwich out of it, right? And you hope for the best. Well, hopefully we can be a lot more intelligent about it than that. But it's obviously that our spiritual practices inform and enlighten our capacity for caregiving, for social action work, or for service work, or just helping, just simply helping, just showing up and helping. And gives us greater spaciousness and resilience and clarity to be able to do that without clouding it with other things that might be going on with us. But Bernie has gone so far as to say service itself is spiritual practice. In other words, it's not that you have to do Zazen and, in the Zen tradition, Zazen and spiritual practice, or you're only doing engaged service or spiritually grounded service if you're somehow fully integrating a formal practice with the service. And many people do feel it's that integration of formal practice and spirit of practice with service. Bernie has gone so far as to say that just the service itself, the action itself, is the spiritual practice. And so that's the kind of note that I'd like to leave us on, that it's, it's obviously we need to do our own work, and it's, this full spectrum of ways in which we might integrate our own evolution spiritually with our interest in helping, serving the community, others, the world, our family, helping create positive social change in the world, and all the different ways in which that might integrate. And then there's all the way to this end that Bernie's pointing to, that the action itself is the practice, and that the fruition of spirituality is always in action. In fact, a wonderful analysis of the early Chan Buddhist teachings pointed to, in the book called Liberating Intimacy, points to the idea that the only place we can really see enlightenment is in the relational field. Right? In other words, where enlightenment actually shows up, where liberation shows up, is in action in the relational field. So I'll leave you with that. For those of you, a couple of things I want to mention before we end here. This is day 5, so I really want to encourage you to check into our culminating day 6 of the Shambhala Mountain Center Awakening the World Conference. And tomorrow is done in partnership with Naropa University. So it's Shambhala Mountain Center collaborating with Naropa University. And the presentations tomorrow on day 6 will be from Naropa University, and 6 fabulous presenters who are from different faith backgrounds, from different spiritual and religious traditions. And they're really going to be looking at the connection between the integration of livelihood and spirituality. And I think that's something that, especially in our Western world, is of importance to all of us, because there's not too many opportunities for someone to be purely supported in a spiritual life in our Western society. The sort of monastic model is not supported very well. So most of us have to have a livelihood. We're out in the world, we're raising families, even if we're single, we need to have a livelihood. And ideally we'd like to have a livelihood in some way. It's not that we have to be professional religionist or something, or whatever our spiritual path is, that we're full-time making money somehow as a teacher or something like that, or working for a church or a spiritual group. But I mean, that very well may be possible, but at the same time, I think we'd all want to have as much integration as possible, as much alignment as possible, so we don't feel like I have to go over and do this thing that seems way out of the context of my spiritual path, so I have money to live, and then I can have enough free time to go over and focus on what's really important to me, my spiritual life and my family and other lives, other aspects of my life. So I think we're all interested in how to further align and integrate those two, livelihood and spirituality. So that should be really interesting. For those of you who would like to engage further with me and with this work I'm talking about, unfortunately, because of some technical difficulties, we had to pre-record this today, and we weren't able to run it live. So we're going to do a live webinar with me on Wednesday, October 29th, and that'll be a webinar talking about how to reduce the negative drama in our lives with mindfulness. And we'll look at, how we get hooked into drama and how to get ourselves unhooked. So it'll be like that. But then we'll do a Q&A. And really the Q&A can address this whole topic of waking up through service, as well as that particular subject of how we untangle ourselves from some of the drama that we get caught up in. And so that's going to run October 29th through Shambhala Mountain Center. And there's a link right below here where you can link to that and sign up for that. It's a free webinar. And also you can go to the Explore tab, I think, on the overall Shambhala Mountain Center conference website, the Awakening the World conference, the Explore tab. So you can find it there. So I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope that we can engage further. And this call to service, I think, it's been said again and again by so many teachers. I think there's a great Indian teacher and philosopher, Rabindranath Tagore, who said something about, I dreamt that the essence of life was joy, and then I woke up and realized it was service, and then I acted in service, and I discovered joy. Right? So there's always been this, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama has said, in the early part of our life, we're completely dependent on the kindness of other human beings to survive. Completely dependent on the kindness of other human beings to survive. And then at the end of our life, with aging and illness and with our dying process, again, we're going to be completely dependent on the kindness of others. And we hope that there will be people there. But then somehow in the middle, we forget, that how this reality of interdependence and the importance of being kind to others. So please, let's all keep that in mind and realize that maybe it's some integration of being kind to ourselves and kind to others, and that the ultimate way to serve our own interests is actually to find ways to serve something larger than ourselves, the larger community, our families, or just what's going on with this crazy world of ours, and trying to leave a better world to our children and to our children's children. So thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you once again to Acharya Fleet Maull for showing up in this conference and offering this wisdom. And just a reminder that if you'd like to connect with Fleet more, please check out the teleseminar that he's hosting on October 29th. And there's more information about that here on this website. Also, we encourage you to check out the rest of the videos that are now available, in which Fleet Maull is in conversation with amazing teachers, as he mentioned. So check that out. Those videos will be up on the site for the next 48 hours, so you can watch them. And after that time, they will be available to you in the resource package that we've been mentioning, which is available for purchase. We really think that the resource package may be of benefit to you in applying these teachings to your life, and you purchasing the resource package really benefits Shambhala Mountain Center and supports our efforts to bring teachings like this into the world. So please take a look at that resource package. And a reminder that Shambhala Mountain Center is a nonprofit organization, and your donations are also extremely appreciated and important. So please consider donating to us. Let's see. So, I'd like to announce the winner of last night's retreat. And that winner is Monica Burgers. So, Monica, we'll be in touch through email and let you know the specifics on how you can claim your retreat and come visit us up at the Mountain Center. And tomorrow's retreat winner will be in contact with you as well. I'd like to say a couple of words about tomorrow. Tomorrow is our big culminating event. It's a live panel discussion co-sponsored by Naropa University featuring 6 teachers, each representing a different spiritual tradition. The event will be broadcast live from Naropa and will offer diverse perspectives on the topics of livelihood and the spiritual journey. So we really are excited to be presenting this tomorrow and hope that many of you will be tuned in. So thanks again and enjoy tonight's interviews, guided meditations, and we look forward to being in touch more. Bye.